Great to be speaking here with Cate Faehrmann. She's the chair of the Public Accountability Committee investigating, let's say, the appointment of John Barilaro, the plans there too. Can you walk us through exactly what the inquiry is about?
Yeah, so we're looking into the appointment of former National Party Deputy Premier John Barilaro into a very plum New York role, $500,000 role as a Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner. In fact, the job was created by John Barilaro when he headed up Investment New South Wales. He created these new positions, and then he was offered the job, but he was offered the job after it was re-advertised, and it came to light through a call for documents in the New South Wales Upper House that in fact a candidate had already been found, was successful, was identified through a global recruitment process, and then the appointment was politicised, and her job offer was rescinded, and a second process happened, and then John Barilaro found himself the successful candidate in that second process.
Now, you've been in the committee hearing the evidence. I'm trying to get my head around exactly the sequence of how it has been alleged at this stage, but it does seem that it was a role he'd sort of prepared for himself. Can you walk me through exactly what is being claimed in the evidence so far?
Well, it seems it's that in the dying days of the Gladys Berejiklian and John Barilaro government, there may have been some discussions, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of, between certain people in the government, at least definitely John Barilaro, giving a direction to make these appointments political as opposed to what they were beforehand, which was appointed by the public sector, a public service, if you like. So it seems that when John Barilaro was expecting or thinking of leaving government and resigning from his position as Deputy Premier and leaving politics, that there may have been some discussions about this position and lining him up for this position. This is even though there was a successful applicant that had been identified, that had been offered the job, that was a woman who was extremely, by all accounts that we have seen, well qualified, and she passed all the tests and was starting to prepare for her new job in New York. Then it seems that there was political interference. We don't know who exactly has been involved with that, but we do know that the instructions came from the Deputy Premier, who was John Barilaro at the time, to make these appointments now ministerial. So it's all very interesting. Ultimately, I think we do know that it's probably more than just John Barilaro who had discussions within government, and what we're trying to determine is who said what to who about this appointment, who knows what within government, but it just, public servant roles like this, $500,000 a year position, for goodness sake, need to be appointed with the highest level of transparency and accountability and integrity, and I don't know whether this has happened in this case, and it really is quite extraordinary that it could be that we're seeing political interference from the highest level. I can't make that accusation yet, but that's certainly, we're certainly needing to see whether anything like that took place.
Now, the $500,000 you just mentioned, is that the salary attached to, or is that the total cost of providing that role in New York?
That's it. That's just the salary. The office itself is something like, the lease was something, say, $40,000, but the fit-out was close to $1 million for the fit-out of this office in New York. So the government's already spent $1 million of it. It's part of a broader investment, kind of global investment strategy, that they have global trade strategy of something around $112 million. So there's certainly a fair bit of money being put into this strategy and this program, all of which was devised under the former Premier when he was in charge of Investment New South Wales as well. So he created the jobs, didn't seem to have any interest in applying for any of the roles until his political future was on tenterhooks, if you like, when the government was not in good shape. And then there seemed to have been discussions and a directive from the government to change the way in which these roles were appointed. And if you were the preferred candidate, the successful candidate in the first round, you would have a right to be very angry and frustrated indeed at what the government did.
Yeah, what strikes me as odd, just in closing, was that I recall when John Barilaro stepped down as Deputy Premier and Leader of the National Party, he had indicated at that time, I'm paraphrasing here, I thought he said he'd run out of puff or energy, or he was just feeling a bit worn out from politics. It does seem counterintuitive then to be putting your hand up for a role representing New South Wales in New York.
Yes, exactly. He said that's right. He had to go and have a rest. I think you said mental health issues, and then a few months later he was making inquiries, I assume, and applying for this role. So what astounds me really is that nobody within the current government, whether it's the Premier, the Treasurer or the current Minister for Investment, New South Wales, didn't realise that this would really not pass the pub test in any way by appointing John Barilaro to this role. It really is extraordinary that they thought they could get away with it. That lack of judgment, if you like, is also extremely concerning, that nobody thought that this would just absolutely blow up in the government's face like it has.
Well, Cate Faehrmann, the Chair of the Public Accountability Committee, thanks for sharing the latest state of play on that. We'll keep watching that inquiry with great interest.
Thanks so much.
And a postscript to that interview, Cate Faehrmann is a member of the New South Wales Greens in the Legislative Council of the New South Wales Parliament, and it was a reference made in there to mental health. If you are in need of support on mental health grounds, contact Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36 or www.beyondblue.org.au.